Sophisticated Silverbacks. Real conversations with real men. And Dave.
All right, well,
Dude,
we're back.
Well, we got to do something about the intro because
Well,
Dave is totally not involved.
Well, that was a free one for a bet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we got to do something.
other than that,
with
it cost. So, we can either talk to Kerr or my buddy, but I think Kerr said he can
do something with that.
he can do something. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're back.
We are back. So, I mean, we wanted to talk about training because it's what we do, what we do best, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, Ken's not here because he's out in Wakanda, and like I said earlier, he's the only person I know that can somehow get in a politician's ear and make their life better.
And Exalted, Exalted's a regular here too. So,
Yep.
Exalted and I trained together at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. when we started out training together. Good times, training before we went into work. But all of you guys have had the benefit of not making the same training mistakes that I made years.
But that's what's good about having a coach or a teacher in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Even being a parent, it all goes to that. Like you're trying to stop the people after you from making the same mistakes.
Yep.
You might have to just move in the mic a little bit because every
sure,
other word's like
sure.
cutting down a little low.
Okay, sure. So as my son's training has evolved through the years, I think everybody's had the benefit of not making the mistakes that I made in training, because part of the learning process for me was writing down every single workout that I did. I wrote down every set and every rep and every pound that I ever lifted. It's in books since 1983. You should have seen Julia's face when I said I have every single set and rep and weight that I lifted since 1983 in books. Pretty wild.
It's funny. I forget how old my daughter was. 1983 is like a last century. So she's like, "Did you have cars?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was 1983. 1883."
Dude, my kids looked at me like I was a mythical land pirate when I told them that we went to Boston for our honeymoon with paper maps.
Yeah.
Like, they looked at me like, "What?"
I remember printing. The big thing was probably late high school, early college, was printing out MapQuest directions.
Yes.
But still using paper, and it made it. And now I have no memory to get anywhere.
Well, and to that point, how we learned about training in. I'll go back as far as high school, because my earliest memories of figuring out how to train and how to get stronger or how to get more ripped came out of Muscle and Fitness magazine. I like to call it Muscle and Fiction. It came out of that magazine, and Lee Haney. I loved Lee Haney. I loved Lee Labrada. Frank Zane, of course, Arnold and Franco and all that, and the classic stuff that you would read in those magazines. And I think if I follow this guy's chest routine, I'm going to look like that.
Yeah.
And it never worked out.
I remember I got into it because I got mono, not the fun way, and I was watching Commando. Like, I was sick. I was just at home. Watching Commando, and the whole thing of me growing up was like everybody was like, "Oh, well, those guys can't wipe their ass. They have no flexibility." And just watching Arnold fight in that movie and his movements and him being like pretty agile for his size, I was like, I can do that. Like, that's what I want to do. And
So-
then I got his education, a bodybuilding book.
So when I started out, I had the old sand weights.
Yeah.
The old. I don't know if it was from Sears or it was a Randy White set. Randy White was I think a defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys. It was a Randy White set of weights, and they were filled with sand, and it was a standard bar and a standard bench that I think we got at Sears, and that's what we started out with. So I had a friend who went on to be a Navy diver, and together we would save our money from work, and we went and there was a store on Frankfurt Avenue called Olympia Barbell, and we went there to buy our first set of iron, and that's how we started getting into lifting. And I was lifting to get better at hockey for high school. I sucked. I was a very average athlete, but I knew I needed to get stronger if I wanted to get more playing time. I had to. I was weak. I was skinny. I was weak. So anything that I needed to buy, that was the place to go buy it. That was the only place to go buy it. So the guy that owned the place or ran the place, he was a Vietnam vet, neat guy, Joe Carberry. So one day, Joe said to me, or Mr. Carberry said to me, "How much do you lift? What do you lift? Do you squat? Do you bench? Do you deadlift?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I bench about 240, 225, 240." And he said, "You should look at powerlifting competitions." And I had no idea what that was. So he explained to me what bench press competitions was, and I weighed probably in the 134 to 136 pound range, which when I started competing, I was too dumb to move down to 132. I just competed in the 148s. I like to eat. I always love food, so I was too stupid to diet down, and I was content to just eat and compete. So I went to my first meet. My first meet was at the Dover Mall. I ended up with a guy who knew how to train the bench press, and he had a set of weights in his apartment, and we would lift there, do all our training there. And he took me to my first meet. It was at the Dover Mall in Dover, Delaware, in the middle of the mall. They held the meet, and I hit a 245 bench, 148 weight class. I finished third in the class, and it was the most exciting thing I'd ever done. I stepped outside my comfort zone. I accomplished something that nobody could minimize. Nobody could say, "Oh, that guy's stupid, dumb, he's slow, he sucks at sports." I accomplished something, and it couldn't be taken away from me. So I learned what I needed to do to go to the next level. I wanted to beat a 245 bench. 245 was third place to me. First place got a sculptured trophy. Second and third place got little plastic trophies, but I wanted that sculptured bench presser. So about a month later, we went to the next meet was out in western Pennsylvania, like far west, like almost Pittsburgh. I forget the town it was in. And I hit 265. I finished second at that meet and got another piece of plastic. So I was disappointed, but I needed to, I felt like if I hit a 275 plus, I had a shot at getting one of those sculptured trophies. So I did a third meet. I forget that was in Delaware. Yeah, it was in Delaware. Again, at a Gold's Gym owned by Joe Klecko. Joe Klecko had played football for the New York Jets. And at that meet, I got my 275, and I got my first place. And I got that sculptured trophy. And I was on top of the world winning that sculpture. Like, that was the shit. I got that sculptured trophy. Shortly after that, I got invited to compete in the very first WMPF Worlds, the World Natural Powerlifting Federation, which I thought was really cool because the WMPF was known for drug testing everybody. Everybody was 100% drug tested, either by urine, polygraph, or blood, which I thought was really cool. So at that meet, there was 520 lifters from 16 countries. I think it was 16 or 22 countries. It was, and I competed in the bench press, and I finished fourth out of close to 16 competitors in my weight class in the 148s. But I hit that 275 again, and that 270. And by that time, I was competing at Power Pit Gym out of Frankfurt and Church Street. I had a coach there. I was probably one of the only guys that was drug-free in that gym. Like, I was encouraged to use, and I just wouldn't. I was scared to. Like, needles freaked me out. I was scared to play around with needles. So I hit the 275, finished fourth, but I looked at the guy that finished first. The guy that finished first had hit a 320, I think it was, a 320 or a 330, and I went, I want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be third. I don't want to be second. I want to be that guy. So what do I need to do to hit those numbers? So just like there was a magazine for bodybuilding there was a magazine for powerlifting, Powerlifting USA magazine. And at that time in the 90s, and I'm sure as far back as the 80s, I think the magazine might have even been around the early 70s. That's how you found meets to compete in. That's where you found competitions in the magazine. They had a listing at the back of the magazine of where the meets for the coming month were going to be, who the meet directors were, their phone numbers, and you would look up the meets, and if you were qualified to go to a meet, you would send your application in with a check. You'd mail it in, and the results for all the powerlifting meets were in those magazines too. So you can look at that magazine, or whichever organization you were competing with, and see what the results were, and see what the top guys were doing. And you could read articles, obviously, about how to train. So, when I had that coach for that little while, his line of thinking was, or his method of training was, if I bench 225 for 3, then I was a 255 bencher. If you benched 225 for 2, you were a 245 bencher. It went, along that with sets and reps. And it made, at the time just starting out, it's like, wow, that makes sense. That works. The other factor was the gear. I was fortunate to be around at the very beginning of powerlifting gear. John Inzer created bench press shirts. So the shirt that I had worn at that time was a pullover, and the guys would laugh at me because I could get into the shirt myself. And there's no way you should be able to get into a pullover bench press shirt yourself. It should take like 3 guys to pull that shirt on you. And I didn't learn that until later, but I was basically wearing a tight t-shirt and hitting these numbers. So shortly after that, had a meet come up in Philadelphia, a national level meet for the WMPF, and I had my mom custom make me a denim bench press shirt. It had my name on it. A guy from Powerlifting USA took a picture of me benching in it, and I got my first double body weight bench in that shirt, which was the shit, because I had read in the magazine that less than 1% of the population bench presses, or less than 1% of males bench press twice their body weight. Less than 0.5% of females can bench press their weight. I had just done double body weight, and basically what amounted to a tight t-shirt in the 148s. Still not deadlifting yet. I went to my first national level meet in Danbury, Connecticut for the WMPF, and I decided I wanted to deadlift too. I pulled 305 in the 148s in my first deadlift meet, and I was hooked. I was like, all right, this is awesome. I wanted to learn how to squat too. So I was learning how to squat and learning how to deadlift with these guys at Power Pit. And at Power Pit, I was very fortunate to lift with the coach there was a guy named Tom Bowers. Tom was a world record holder in the deadlift, great deadlifter. Tom pulled, I think it was like 622 at 198 or 220 at like almost 60 years of age. But there was a top 3 lifter there all time by age and weight named Larry McCulley. Larry McCulley, at 66 years of age, benched over 600 at 198. And squat. I'm sorry, he benched over 400 at 198, and he squatted and deadlifted over 660 at that weight and age. It was sick. So I was spoiled, seeing all that. If I'd go to a gym, if I went to a powerhouse or I went to wherever, and I'd see these kids or even adults lifting, I'd be like, yeah. I mean, you're spoiled seeing a 66-year-old guy squat 650 pounds for reps. Pretty sick stuff. And the super heavy there was a guy named Willie Lewis. Will, we were actually on Channel 6. Channel 6 did a story on the gym and did a story on Will because he was training for the world's strongest man. And in a powerlifting competition, he had benched 650. He had 26-inch arms. The guy was 340 pounds, 26-inch arms. His jacket was a 6XL, and he squatted 900 for reps, ass to grass, like low, deep squats is what I was what I grew up around watching. And then to come to today, and you're on social media and everything else, and watching these lifts, and I'm just not impressed at all by what I say. It's not to sound snooty. It takes a lot to impress me.
Well, you have two on like social media. You have the hot chick or the jacked asshole. It's like he puts a couch on his back and he's up on like 4 dumbbells and he's doing push-ups. It's dangerous. And it's yeah, you're right. It's not impressive. My my journey was different. I started not doing anything right.
Hmm.
Well, first I started with the education of bodybuilding, which starts you pretty slow. Like
Yep.
you know what I mean. You're doing body movement stuff, and that's actually pretty good. But then I started to get more advanced in that, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Who authored that?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, he's. I mean, he's even the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding is a great anatomy type book for lifting.
Great book.
But like I just didn't know what I was doing, and I really couldn't get past body weight on a bench press until I found. And I don't want to mention. I'm going to kind of slam it, the name of the workout, but it was essentially a watered down version. Now I know of Luke Simmons stuff.
Okay.
I was doing 10 to 12 reps. Like I was doing bodybuilding stuff. So I wasn't getting stronger. So that was way in the service. I found that, and then my bench went up amazing. I mean, I went from like 225 and within a couple years to like 535 reps of 3, completely raw. But like I didn't switch it up like I should, which is why my body's beat up. I was doing squats at like 735. I would wrap my knees. That was probably about it with a belt. And then like my wife would tell you shrugs. I would put a towel in my mouth because I clench my teeth so much. And it was like 5, again, was probably about the same as my bench, probably about 535 shrugs. All this stuff for reps. My push press was like, 275. Like
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it was like
That's pretty sick.
I was like, and it was, and my wife would tell you I would have a mouthpiece and a towel in my mouth constantly, just to make sure I'm not crushing my teeth. But it was a service. So like every time I competed in a service, I would get randomly piss tested the next day. And that got annoying, like I would do like when I hit the 535 bench and got my shirt, because they would give you shirts at the base that I was at with your weight. Like the next day at like 3 in the morning, they're like, you have to report to med hall, and I'm sitting there peeing in a cup, and it's just like, after a while you stop competing on there, and I started to compete off base and started to do strongman stuff. But again, like the knowledge that you gave me within the last couple of years, I really wish I had. It would have saved my body, and I would have been so much further along than I was. Everything. For me, pre-internet was just, like you said, whatever you can get your hands on to read. I didn't have the direction that you had. Like, I worked at gyms growing up as a lifeguard, and it was the Northeast Racket Club, the Aquatic Fitness Center. So, like, I was the young guy in there. And you would get, like, this guy that was, like, he was in, naturally good shape, would work out a little bit, and he was the trainer, and then he would give you advice, but his body type was nothing like mine. He really didn't have any more knowledge than I did past the books that he read. And then I was a chubby kid, and then I ended up meeting Jake, who gave me a diet, and I lost weight, and I was at like 230. And then again, I got sick. Stuff happened in service. I put on a bunch of weight. Went back to him. He wanted an astronomical amount of money, or he couldn't train me, and I got turned away from a lot of people. It was weird because I was overtraining. But it wouldn't have been overtraining years ago.
Yep.
And then I would get like these flu-like symptoms. So after the hospital incident, where they tell me it was a panic attack, but after 15 years of panic attacks, I had my life flash before my eyes. I called Dave, and I'm like, Dave, I need help. That again, we kind of went through this a few times. That's kind of when he's like, well, I know somebody to train you. I'm like, I hope it's not that bald dick. From his school, right? On what was it, DeMar? And then I walked up and I'm like, oh shit. And then you're very stern looking because I guess he sent you a couple people that just didn't stick or didn't show up.
Yeah.
And
I have a very high retention rate too.
Yeah.
I have a very, very high retention rate for clients.
Look, you start people like I tell everybody, your first initial assessment for probably about the first week is just seeing what people can do. It's very light.
At the same time, my approach to training people got more polished through the years, through experiences. I mean, when I was at Damar Drive, I don't think I was working at. I might have been working at Holy Redeemer. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Because I was a Redeemer for 17 years as a lead exercise physiologist. But you learn, working there, in a clinical environment that to look at a room, and I hate using the analogy, but everybody's a snowflake. Everybody's different. So everybody's going to respond to training different. I can't train you the same way that I train Exalted. I can't train Exalted the same way that I train my daughter. I can't train my daughter the same way I train your daughter. Everybody responds physically and mentally to training different. So the approach has to be different. So you can't just yell at everybody to coach everybody. And it took me a while to learn that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
yeah, and there's and I know that too because I mean there was a couple other chubby guys that started, with me at the same time, and they would bitch and complain about some of like the stuff that we would do, because they're not used to moving at all, and they would look at
Yep.
me like this doesn't bother you. I'm like, no, it absolutely bothers me, but it has to. Like
Yep.
you have to embrace this difficulty because it's benefiting you.
I've always told, and like part of the learning process and part of the evolution of my training came from Powerlifting USA magazine. I mean, again, it was the only magazine that covered the sport. So within that magazine, I had some tough times in my life. I got divorced young. I was homeless for a short period of time. Um, and what came out of that magazine, in addition to the training, was there was a sports psychologist in that magazine named Judd Biasiato. And I learned how to mentally prepare for training and for competition and to like think about how I approach life, like to look inward instead of looking outward to solve my problems and to solve my training. So as my training evolved, so did gear in the sport. We weren't wearing um, pullover shirts anymore. Now I competed both. Now there's a lot of people I guess that don't know this because people, I always get somebody anytime I lift something and compete and throw up a number. Everybody's like, "Oh, he wears one of those shirts," or he wears one of those suits. I competed raw too, um, until I was in my 40s. I was still competing. I would still do both. I would compete raw. I'd bench press twice my body weight raw too. So, that argument goes out the window there. I like to look at those people and go, yeah, I was 35 once too. Like, I'm 56 now. I can't lift raw anymore. And I'm smart enough to know that. So, with the evolution of training, I started to read articles by Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell. And early on, I was smart enough to take those articles and I would take them to a copy machine and put them in a binder every week, or I'm sorry, every month that I got the magazine. So I have every article that Simmons wrote in a binder. I can go through that binder and look back like, my son got hurt his back training at the academy and needed to take a break from deadlifting. Well, there was an article on how to improve your deadlift without deadlifting. And I knew that. So we were able to pull that article up. But to the point, the evolution of training, I had to get beyond the 225 times 3 equals a 255 bench. And, I read this guy's articles, and this guy broke everything down into physics and math. And it made sense to me. I mean, for a kid that I struggled in high school, I struggled in elementary school, I struggled through high school big time. Had to explain math to me like I was a 4-year-old. But to look at the way he explained it made total sense to me. Physics made sense to me because I could put my hands on it. So he explained the linear relationship between force and velocity and how it applied to conjugate periodization or conjugate training, as he termed it. He read these Eastern European authors, and he would always quote these authors. So I wanted to go further. I mean, it piqued my curiosity. I started reading them. You were able to pick up these books translated into English and read the books. Now, by and large, a lot of that math was way over my head. A lot of that algebra is so far over my head. But I understood the concepts, and I understood how the training worked. So I understood that you could take those percentages, and if the percentages were, he wrote an article called "How to Bench Press 500 Easy." Well, I was bench pressing 275. How am I going to bench press 500 easy? You were able to take the numbers and apply them by percentages to meet your bench. So the other thing about Simmons that really struck me and really influenced me was that you could call him and he would talk to anybody on the phone. You could call that guy up and ask him questions about his article or ask him questions about training, and the guy would talk to you for hours. And I loved that. And I thought, wow, that heavily influenced me. The other thing that influenced my training was Dave Tate and EliteFTS.com. Another guy that you could call on the phone. When Dave started the business, I think the business was run out of his house. So when you would call, you would either get him or his wife on the phone when you went to place an order, whatever. But he had a huge Q&A on his website. And from that Q&A, I learned how to really learned more in depth from the Simmons articles how to apply bands and chains to my training for speed. So I applied it to my squat, I applied it to my deadlift, and I applied it to my bench. The gear that I wore, that we evolved through gear. I was still wearing Inzer. I went into Ernie France was another big guy for gear. Now France was a older lifter who also competed in pro bodybuilding. I think he was a Mr. Universe and also a world record holder in powerlifting. The guy lifted over 800 pounds in the I think in the deadlift. I think he deaded over 800 pounds. I wore his gear because his gear was more durable than Inzer at the time, and a lot of powerlifters will remember this. Guys like Nick Saronis, guys like that, or Andre Skiba and Joe Cow, that shirts would blow out, and that was a scary fucking thing. Like you'd be bench pressing and you'd be bringing a bar down to your chest or pushing it off, and then poof, the shirt would blow out. And then, you're dumping weight in an instant. Well, my training partner at the time was 97 pounds. She's not catching 385 pounds. She's not catching 365. So, I chose to go with Franz for gear. It was a higher quality. I never, ever blew out of a Franz shirt. And the shirts then became, instead of poly, they went to denim and canvas, and they were mixed. Now, to get that on, you'd have to baby powder your torso and baby powder the inside of the shirt, and it would be pulled over. You'd get it up, work it up the sleeves as high as you could get it, so it's all the way up to your throat. And you're thinking about getting choked when you wear one of the F8s, so you're choked already. Now, go up. She's got to pull it over, and now you're breathing in all that baby powder until she can get it down over he can get it down over your head, and it would get inched down all the way, and then we would wet it with a squirt bottle to get it to stick to the body. I mean, this is fucking crazy, right? Just to bench press, somebody that doesn't understand it's going to look at you like you're out of your fucking mind, right? So we would get the shirt on and lift, and we went to a meet. I think my best in a denim shirt, I hit 340 at 148, which is a pretty sick number at 148. One worlds in that shirt. Switched over a Finnish company called Metal. Metal Sport and Wear came along, and Elite FTS carried their gear. And I thought, I'll give them a try because now the shirts are becoming open back. You don't have to have it pulled over your head anymore. So my first experience with an open back shirt, I'll back up for a second, was at an IPA meet in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. A guy named Mike Miller ran it. Now, Mike Miller was a 1,000-pound squatter. So we're at his meet, and I'm there to PR in the bench. I think I'm going to hit 385. There to hit 385. And I did the deadlift too. So I often competed in the Ironman, the total, the bench and deadlift, because I just sucked at squat. I always sucked at squat. I did a fair amount of full meets, but I picked my spots. So at that meet, it was hot. It was crazy humid out. So my training partner's on the platform competing, and I'm taking my warm-ups, and we can't get me in my shirt. It's too humid. Even with the baby powder, we can't get it on. So that Mike Miller guy, he's a huge dude, is trying to pull it on, and we can't get it on, and we hear that I'm in the hole. I'm like 3 out. So he looks at me, holds up a pair of scissors. And my eyes just went, like, fuck, I'm going to bomb out of this meet if I can't get my opener in. I said, cut it. Go ahead, cut it. He cut it down the middle. We put the shirt on, and that was the first time I lifted in an open back shirt. I hit my opener. I hit 360 or 365 in that shirt. I didn't get a second. I took a second and third, and I just couldn't groove it because the groove changed with it being an open back shirt.
What's just for people that don't know, what's a bomb out?
All right, so a bomb out is if you get 3 attempts when you compete in a lift at powerlifting. So you can compete in individual events. You can compete in the squat, the bench, or the deadlift, or all 3. But you have to make a lift. You have to make one good lift in each event or in an individual event to have a total. So if it's bench press only, you have to go 1 for 3 at least to, get a legit number or to get a qualified number. If you go 0 for 3, that's a bomb out. You bombed out of the meet. You zeroed.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
just because
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
other
no,
people
no,
that,
no,
that
no,
are,
no,
aren't
yeah.
in this world listen, and they'll go, "What the hell is
Yeah,
that?"
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
it-
I've never bombed out. I've always opened. I'm very conservative, and you know this. That I tend to be very conservative, so sometimes over conservative. I learned from reading Fred Hatfield was another one, Dr. Squat, that it's probably safe and smart to open with something that I could do for 3 reps. If I could do it for 3, solid 3. If I miss it on a technicality, I didn't listen to the judge. It was poor form. I can repeat that. I can't go back down. You can't go back down. And if you make a lift, you have to go up by at least, I think it's 5 pounds. You have to go up at a minimum of 5 pounds. So I've never bombed out. I've always opened very conservative and never bombed out of him.
Yeah, so that brings us up to what happened recently. So where does that put you for the bench press?
So Bill and I were sitting here. My training was very difficult for my last meet. I competed in early May, and I had planned to compete. And Bill got sick a few times. I had other training partners who didn't make it to training, and I trained a lot by myself in that cycle, a ton. A lot of my lifting was done by myself to go into that meet, and it challenged me hard to put up the number that I wanted to put up. And I never had that weight in my hands. And, one of the last sessions, I think it was maybe the last session before I went to weigh-ins, you and I were sitting here, and my best had been 475 last year. My 475 was my best. And sitting here, I was thinking about what am I going to do? Like I thought, with Andrea behind me, I hit a 455, and then I took 475 and I dumped it, badly, but it didn't feel heavy. So when I thought about it, I thought, all right, I'm going to open 465 because that's pretty safe. I smoked the 455. I grooved it and smoked it. So I'll go 465, 485 for the PR, and then icing on the cake. And what did you say?
You're not there to lift 485. You'll get 2 shots at it if you mess up on the weight that you want to. And I think it was the second to last because I was here to last lift.
Yep.
And then the week before I wasn't.
Right.
And that's when you were like,
that's
up
when
in the air.
That's
But I told you what you would have told me.
Yeah.
That we're not going there to lift 485.
I was nervous. I still get a little nervous. I still get a little bit nervous, but I thought about it and I was like, man, all I wanted to do was bench 500 pounds. That's all I want to do. I don't want to come out of there going, yeah, I did 485. I took my best shot at 500. Like, my whole thing was coming in for 500. And when I went to the weigh-in, I made weight. I was like 4 pounds underweight, made weight, and she asked me what my opener was. And I said 465. She looked at me and she goes, "Are you sure?" And I was taken aback. I was like, "What do you mean, am I sure?" She goes, "Well, a lot of people bombed out of the last meet, and they weren't confident in the weight." And I thought to myself, "Fuck you."
And you were set wrong.
Yeah, you've never seen me train. Like, how do you know what I can do and can't do? I got that fuck off in me, like right then and there. Like right then and there, I was like, all right, it's on. It's 100% on.
You were really, really aggressive the next day. I mean, you hated everybody but me, and that was just.
I was fired up. Yeah. I was there to do it. It was on. I was there to do it. Like Andrea had to work, so Andrea's like, I'm sorry, I can't be there. I'm gonna miss it. And I came in angry.
It was my daughter's junior prom. I'm running up in jeans and a t-shirt.
I came in angry. I smoked that opener, and that 500 didn't feel heavy at all. The hardest part for me was grooving it, And
The weight,
yeah, and the heat and
it
humidity.
was bad.
I mean, the heat and humidity. My arms were turning purple from the shirt just sticking to me.
They really should have just started the air in the morning before everybody got there and just had it been cold, because then it was just a bunch of hot bodies.
Well, running competitions, I've done that too. Yeah, when I worked at the J, I ran some meets for the WMPF, and I ran some meets for benefits. And excuse me, running a meet's a very difficult thing. It's not an easy thing, and I have the highest respect for them because I think they run a really good meet. I think they do a really great job. And I don't know that they have the air conditioning in that building the way it is to look at as we drive out and we pass a CrossFit place, they never have the air on. Their doors are open all the time. I don't know if that's just the stupidity of CrossFit or they don't have air. So, I don't know that the guy has enough air conditioning to keep it that cool inside for a competition. I think they deliberately hold the meet at the time of the year that they do. So, there's a chance that it could be a little bit cooler in there. I don't know.
Well, they really didn't start it until later. They had the doors open,
Yeah.
and it was already kind of like a humid day, but it was
Yeah.
mild.
Yeah.
But then as soon as all the bodies showed up,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
there's nothing worse to me though than the people that are showing up with 20 people. Like I used to get, talk about getting angry during a meet. You're in a warm-up room and you're trying to find your way to the platform after your name and you're trying to hear your name get called
yeah.
and you're trying to find your way to the platform and you've got to step over, somebody changing a diaper and somebody there taking a picture and somebody holding a water bottle and I think the WMPF did a really good job back in the day of one guy, one coach. That's it, or one girl, one coach. That's it in the warm up room. So the warm up room wasn't a total circus. I mean, at the 92 Worlds, my very first Worlds experience, that was a circus. But after that, I think Troy Ford did a really good job of learning from experience at every meet that he held
Well, I got spoiled because the first comeback lift I had was that Ralph's
at
mock
Ralph's.
meet, and it was a smaller meet,
Yep.
and it was really well run, and like I knew all those dudes, so you could trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they separated,
Yeah.
get over here, lifters over here.
Yep.
So they ran it real well like that. And then when I went to that meet where the pins were set wrong, I'm just going to throw that one out there. It still it's at my crawl.
Yeah, you're going to have to make that one right.
Yeah.
I don't care if the doc says you're going to lift light for the rest. You got to go back and make that right.
It's just like
I wouldn't be able to leave that alone.
yeah, it
That's
was
unfinished business.
yeah, it's kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? Like that first one, like a little bit like the last one. Like you said, they run a really good meet. There's just so many damn people there, more so than the lifters. And I get it, you want to see them, but they're up
Yep.
on the platform, they're taking pictures. Like just back off
Yep.
the platform.
Give me some space to
You know
get
what I
done. Give me some space. What I'm here to do.
Your coach and
Yep.
maybe somebody filming from your
Yeah.
gym.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like that just stays out of the way, that knows to stay out of the way. Because even trying to film for you from the back corner off the platform, there's people getting in front of me that I had, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's my coach.
Yep.
I'm his partner. You know
Yep.
what I mean? He just, yeah, it was that's a rough thing.
And I had to decide. We were told when Sam went to the academy to delve ourselves into a hobby or find something to do to take our minds off of the stress of having a kid in the service. So I thought, all right, you know what? Like I gave up competing when he was playing ice hockey because I felt kind of silly to miss him playing hockey to go to a powerlifting meet. It's an amateur sport, and my kid's going to do something amazing, and I'm going to miss it because I'm doing something for me. And I thought that was kind of selfish. So I gave up the sport. I still trained, but not like I was before. I wasn't wearing gear when I trained. I just, did my best. Yeah, I was just working out, just pretty much working out and taking some heavy lifts here and there because I like to deadlift and, of course I like to bench. And I still squat and all that. And I was still playing ice hockey too because it didn't interfere with his hockey. So I decided to get back into the sport, and the sport evolved even more. The shirts were now open back, and the shirts were I don't know what we even call today's shirts. They were not slingshot, but I learned about slingshots. I learned about slingers and all of that. But Pharrell really moved the sport forward big time. And the thing about the slingers, and the thing about the shirts that he made that helped me more than the other shirts was the shirts or the gear today is now in my natural raw groove. A poly shirt would dump my bench down around my belly. I was benching off my belly. So the groove was, the arch was like that. So my shoulders were always hurt. And my shoulders were always banged up for months after I'd compete from being in and out of that gear. These shirts were my natural groove. I didn't have to fight to I didn't have to fight the bar finding my chest. So I'm forever grateful to guys like Rob Farrell for keeping me in the sport because without this gear and without these slingers and slingshots, I wouldn't be able to compete and I wouldn't be able to train without being sore and having my shoulders messed up all the time and my joints all the time. I'm going to be 56 this year. I have a few goals left. I'd like to hit a triple body weight bench, and I'd like to move down a weight class to 165 and do it down there too before I get out. Because I don't know that at the rate that you know our joints hurt and we're getting out of bed like we're older, all that I'm going to be able to do all that when I'm 60. I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. But I want to accomplish those things before I'm 60.
I mean, the shirt helps longevity, but it also helps raw strength too.
Yeah.
Because even I noticed like the more I used a shirt when I would not bench with the shirt, like my warm up, I can go heavier. In like my earlier warm ups, I would put the slinger on maybe at like 3 plates, and then it start to go to 4 plates, and I had to put the slinger on and things like that. So it does help on that end, and I hate that too. When people like when I was learning how to use it, I don't even know who it was. I don't know if it was a friend of a friend. I didn't post it on a public thing, but somebody just started giving me shit, like, because it was like it wasn't twice my body weight, and I'm like, who are you first of all? And I'm like, I'm just learning how to use this. So you just get people to have that are going to talk shit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Unless you're up on there with your Lululemons and huge fake boobs, doing a 225 deadlift, which is fine. You know what I mean? Like that. There's no, but like, let's not like you. Like it's a good weight if that's what you can lift. However, it's not amazing compared to the things that I've seen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where did that last lift put you? Does that put you in a book somewhere?
I think I'm top 3 all time by weight and age. I think that was a top 3 lift.
We can get you lifting 400 at 90. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that'll put you in the top 1 for weight and age.
I don't know if I'll be awake at 90.
Well, that is always cool when you see that like 70-year-old lady
Oh,
who's
yeah.
like maybe like 120 pounds who just gets up and like she's doing 275, 350, deadlift, and it's just
Well, I mean,
it's an amazing feat.
these numbers are for me, and they're for my kids. So my kids will have something to um, strive for, or something to try and beat. Because ultimately, I want them to be stronger and to be better than I am at everything they do, whether it's their education, professionally, or strength wise. I want them to be better than I am. My son is already 10 times better than I ever was at hockey. And both of my kids have it in their DNA, in their genes, to lift stronger than I do. I mean, he's expressed an interest in competing in powerlifting. Just no time while he's at school. He may eventually, and if he does, I hope that he puts up numbers bigger than I did.
Well, the amount of time he spends on hockey that eventually goes away.
Yeah.
Because he's no longer in school, but yeah, so I could see that, and he's strong. My daughter's has strength too. I just
Yeah.
wish she was a little bit more consistent. She gets flustered and overwhelmed, especially during the school year. And wrestling kind of killed it for her this year. It was just a poor program.
Well, I mean, when I think about where my son was in lifting in school compared to where I was in high school, lifting, I know what I was lifting because I have everything written down in books since 1983. Every lift, every pound, every rep is all in books, so I can look back and see what I did to overcome a sticking point or overcome a plateau. And the same thing goes for um, every all 3 lifts. So you know another point to be made, I guess, is that as a 300-pound bencher, how much more knowledgeable I was at 300 compared to a 200-pound bench presser about training. and how much more knowledgeable I was at 400 compared to what it took me to get to 300, and what it took to get to 500 compared to 400. I can't tell you what it feels like to bench 800 pounds. I have no idea. I've never had that weight in my hands. I've had that weight on my back, though. I did walk out an 800-pound squat. But I can't tell you what it feels like to have it in your hands. So to try and tell you what to bench press, I can throw numbers at you. I can throw percentages at you, but I can't tell you what it feels like. Only you can do that. And when you go back through your training logs and you go back through books, which I don't know if kids do that. I don't know how many people write down their training anymore. The youngest kid that I know, or kids that I know that are into the training and appreciate the history of the training is Ralph Talati and Death Wish Barbell. Those guys. Him. Who's the other guy? Shit.
Tim, Mark, Roman.
Yep. Totally appreciative and understanding of the history of the sport. Those guys totally get it, and I'm pretty sure those guys write down what they do too.
And great people.
Yeah. Amazing people.
They're another
Amazing
group of people that will sit there and talk with you about anything that they're using.
Yep.
About
Very
any
giving of their
techniques.
time.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And they're genuinely excited. Like if they know you, they're excited when you're up on the platform.
Ralph and his wife Nat are the salt of the earth.
They're good people.
Yeah, they're great people. We were very fortunate as a small basement group, that competes to have them and have their support. To have them for your first meet, for your daughter's meet, from my first meet back, competing, the first year that Sam was at school, and to have their help at the last meet that we did. We were very fortunate, and salt of the earth people. I can't express that enough.
Yeah, I mean, like, it took it's funny because my sports were different. They were competitive, right? So, like, when I first started to gear towards this, it was just like, beat your enemy kind of thing. And you're like, it's not like that at all. Like, you at first, you didn't realize what I was, No,
you had that kill. You had that, like, I'm gonna kill everybody in the room.
And you're like, but he's a good dude. And I'm like, but I'm competing against him. And you're like, no, you're not. Like, you'll see when you get there, you're not competing against anybody but yourself.
You're competing against yourself. And all I ever wanted to do was put up a bigger number. I know I wanted to finish first. I wanted to have one of those sculpture trophies, but I evolved too. And as I evolved beyond, the desire to finish first, that like first place is everything. I learned the first place isn't everything. Being better than you were the last time is everything. The placing will take care of itself. I don't care if I finish third, fifth, fourth, first. If I did something I've never done before, I got better. I improved. If I'm doing the same thing I've always done, I'm no better than I was. Like, what did I do for the last year? What have I accomplished in the last year if I hit the same number I did last year? What am I doing here?
Yeah, and can we also say that you don't need Sour Patch Kids if you're fucking lifting? I mean, like, it's one thing, like, if you're a prime athlete, but if you're a fatty boombati such as myself, you don't need a trough of fucking sugar candy.
I mean, I learned early on about showing up to the meets prepared with things that I needed from Simmons and Biasiato. So when I went to Worlds in Atlanta in '97, I packed a first aid kit in a metal box with metal scissors that went on the plane with me. and I packed extra laces from my shoes. I packed anything that could possibly go wrong. I was prepared for it. And the reason for the first aid kit was if you busted your shins open deadlifting, you had to cover it up before you came to the platform. You weren't, they weren't going to let you get blood on the bar. And it happened. And I was prepared for it. Today, a first aid kit like that going on an airplane, it's not gonna happen. But again, the sport evolved, and now there's special socks that people wear to cover their shins, which wasn't a thing when I was competing.
And you have to have discipline in anything you do. That's like the one thing that the military taught me, and it's essentially the same thing, just applied differently. And it bothers me when like I'm not considered a power lifter yet. Like, I haven't had that much time in the thing. And there's people there that'll say that they're power lifters, and then, well, I don't have the time for it because they don't want to eat a good diet, or they feel they don't have the time, and they think they're shorter workouts because it's a lower rep range or not taking a rest. And that bothers me too. I mean, have discipline in the things that you do. Like the one meet we're at, the person saw me again. They're like, wow, you lost a lot of weight from the last time I saw you. What are you doing? I'm sitting there eating a protein bar and they're eating a donut. And I think a lot of people lack it. It is a tough sport.
I love food, and I think everybody knows that. I have a client that says some people eat to live, some people live to eat. I live to eat. I love food.
That weight cut's gonna suck.
But I've done it. I did it at 50 years old, because I heard people say that I couldn't do it. Where I was working, I was still working at Holy Redeemer, and people were like, no way, you're 50 years old, you're too old for that now, and yeah, you're not going to be able to do it. And I went through holidays. I went through a birthday. I went through holidays. I made 165, and I benched 425 at 165. I did it. And I went, all right, now I'm going to have a hoagie.
Yeah, the post weigh-in luncheon that you have is a pretty fun time when you see it in movement. So like that does happen too, and I mean, it just anything like we have people that want to do a lot of stuff that don't put the time in.
They just kind of want it. There's a difference between wanting it and just kind of wanting it. You'll hear people say, I think about running a marathon, or I think about competing. Powerlifting is it's a much tougher sport than people realize. People think that doing a mud run is tough. People think that doing a marathon's tough, or a bike race, and those are tough events. I have the highest respect for people who compete in that, but most of those people have never attempted to compete in a powerlifting, and they have no idea. Or I shouldn't say that they don't compete in that, but don't know what the training to compete in that is. Don't have the courage to take a weight in their hands that scares you. You have to be consistent in taking something that challenges you. And the thing about the sport is that it teaches you to get comfortable being uncomfortable, either in the gear or in the training itself. It's all inherent in the training, and that's life.
Well, it's one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is one of the best arts all around, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because you have somebody choking you, you're on your back.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that causes discomfort that ultimately betters you
Yep.
substantially more than the status quo. Like going to the gym and working out and just doing something that you can do all the time. Yeah, that's better than doing nothing. But doing more than what you did before and pushing yourself a little bit into the uncomfort. Like I showed up with a hospital bracelet on because I was in the ER, and I showed up to training, like because it's my moment is in. Like it scares the shit out of me when I put some of those heavy weights up, but my face goes blank, and it took you and Exalted a while to get used to that because it humbles me and slows down my mind, so I have to focus.
The training for me was therapy. I mean, I had ADHD and anxiety growing up. I mean, I had some of the worst ADHD and anxiety in high school. I was an outcast. I was not a popular kid. So for me, it was something that nobody could ever take away from me. It was therapy. Nobody could, through their criticism, take away something that I accomplished. I accomplished it. There's nothing to say. You can say what you want, but it's an accomplishment, and it's not going away. It's an established established lift. Can't go away.
I just like amazing people and making them wrong when they say I can't do something.
Well, that's why I'm going to make 165 again. It's gonna suck down here for you guys, but I'm going to make it.
It's going to suck all around. I'm your friend. I'm around you more than here. You not eating what you want to eat, it's going to be pretty rough. Either that, or you better start playing hockey 5 days a week.
Well, I got to get past the triple body weight bench at 181 first. So I got to get the 535 first, and then when that's done, just one thing at a time. I mean, my focus is going to be on that, and then I know what I want to do long term. I know what my plan is long term. I know where I'm going with this.
I'm here.
Oh, I know you are.
I'll be pulling that weight off. Yeah, I mean, it's truly been probably an amazing going on 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I have so much more in my mind, and my body's in so much better one shape that it was, but like it just feels better than if I were to do it on my own. Like I said, every time I would lift, I get flu-like symptoms. I'd be out for a few days. I'd have a fever, and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm glad I was pointing in your direction. And just the people I met, like I met Joe Cal, I met
Yep.
Ralph.
Joe Cal's a great
I
guy.
met Matt Goodwin. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like they're all phenomenal people.
Yep.
They're all excited to see you in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You crack a few jokes with them. You exchange information with them. They really want to see where you're at. When they're the type of people, when they say how you doing, they want to know.
Mm-hmm.
They mean that. You know what I mean? Like, how are you doing? How's this going? What's going on? Like Tim still, Tim, I didn't post for a bit, and he's like, "What's going on, man? I haven't seen your post in a while. What's going on?" And I was telling him, I'm on the injury list. He's like, "Oh, that sucks, but I get it." You know what I mean? But like, they generally check in on you and see where you're at. And
The sport has taken me some pretty great places. I mean, I got to represent our country 11 times at WMPF Worlds. I was very fortunate to do that. I won 8 world championships in 11 tries, and I was the best pound for pound best lifter at one of those events. Accomplishments that just can't be taken away and can't be minimized. It happened. I did it. That's it. Dave Tate, Elite FTS, and in the early days of Elite FTS, and the manner and hearing Dave's story, hearing about Dave Tate, hearing his story, pushed me to go to college. I was not a true college freshman until I was 31 years old. After hearing his story and talking with him on the phone, it drove me to go to college. It drove me to believe I can do this. I'm smart enough to do this. I always thought, after going through high school and hearing other kids tell me how dumb I am, how stupid I am, I was in learning disabled classes, that, when somebody tells you that long enough, you believe it. But then when you find people who believe in you, like a Dave Tate or like, my wife, Andrea, I thought, all right, I can do this. So I got through, I went, made the decision to go to school, which was a big leap for me because I suck at math. I had to get help. I had got a lot of help with math. I graduated with a 3.5 or a 3.7 undergrad. I went to a really good school. I went to Skidmore College. I traveled back and forth to Saratoga Springs to do labs and to complete assignments and stuff like that. It was a long 3 years. We gave up a lot. We sacrificed a lot for me to go to school. We stopped going out to eat. Stopped going to movies. We did a lot for me to get my education, and my full-time job paid for my education. So we used I should rephrase, we used my full-time salary to pay for my education. Is how it worked. And then when I completed that education, I decided to go for my master's degree. By that time I was already working at Holy Redeemer. And I wanted to be the lead exercise physiologist. And to be the lead exercise physiologist, it required a master's degree. Well, I made a monumental mistake in life, I think, that I went for the master's degree in exercise physiology when I should have went for nursing. Because the courses, or the standard courses for nursing, would expire when I finished my undergrad, within a year after I finished. And I went for the master's instead to be the lead physiologist because I think I would have been a really good nurse. I really enjoyed that too.
Yeah, that tell me you had no empathy though. You're more sympathetic to shit. You're like, rub some dirt on it, everything stops bleeding eventually.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Why are you being such a pussy? If I'd have came in and saw you ready to, run an IV on me, I'd have been like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah, but I owe that to Andrea, and I owe that to the belief or or at least the idea I owe to Dave Tate and Elite FTS.
Well, I mean, I owe a lot to you. You're one of the few people that didn't look at me like a fat piece of shit and a liability. It's like everywhere that I went to. Like, I even called CrossFit places. They wouldn't call me back. I emailed them. They wouldn't I told them my weight. Like, can I do this? Because my question was always like, I don't want to damage my body more.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never get a response or I get turned away. And like, when I showed up, it wasn't like, you were just like, you are what you are. We'll get you where you want to go. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, and that came from the clinical. I mean, again, to what I had said earlier about being more polished from experience. You learn from, if you're smart, you learn from experience. You can go back and say, all right, I've seen that before. I know what to do to help that guy or help, help that woman. I know what to do. Having worked at Holy Redeemer and having worked with people who had chronic illnesses, I knew what to do. And I also knew what to do as your level of fitness evolved. Like I knew you were capable of competing, but we had to get you there. We couldn't start you out at 520 pounds bench pressing, trying to bench press, 600. I had to get you healthy first or healthier. My long-term goal for just about everybody is that your health comes first. My long-term goal is for you to see your grandchildren, to be around to see your daughter get married and have children and get to play with your grandchildren. Nobody's going to remember that you bench pressed 800 pounds. Nobody's going to remember that. Nobody's going to care. Nobody up those steps is going to care about that.
Yeah, and coming from what, like, I went from 230 and just solid to like all the health problems, and it was constantly just like stages. Every time I would go to a doctor. Just, look, the only thing you got to do for me is keep me alive long enough that my daughter remembers me. You know what I mean? Then it was alive long enough that she remembers me. Like, keep me alive long enough that she'll be set for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I give her as much knowledge as I can to be resilient and deal with everything out there. And then like, and everybody would be, okay. You're like, no, dude, you're gonna play with your grandkids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're that all that other shit's gonna come with you playing with your grandkids.
Yep.
And you're like, I don't know if we can get you past 70, but we're gonna try as hard as hell to get you to 70. And that was always your perspective. And I've seen you do it with other people. And when you're fat and morbidly obese, and you go to a doctor, and that's what they call you, morbidly obese, and everyone with health problems, regardless if it started before or after, they're telling you that you're morbidly obese. You start to get beat up, and then you feel you don't want to ask people for help because it shows, oh, well, you got to lose weight. Nobody ever really tells you how. You never did that. You were just like, look, just show up.
Yep.
That's all I need you to do is show up. You know what I mean?
Consistency is everything.
Yeah, and I'll give you the knowledge, you do the work, and it'll sort itself out.
I do the thinking, you do the exercising.
Now, when you ask me questions, what I say, I'm like, no, you do the thinking. Well, what weight are you thinking? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. What am I thinking?
I can't tell. Again, I can't tell what something feels like when you lift it. I can't tell how hard it is. I can't tell what that feels like. I can look at bar speed. I can look at the form. I have some idea, but you feel like you got a Mack truck in your hands. I'm not going to tell you to add 50 to it. Let's go, Bill. Let's bench 800. Yeah. You also have to know your limits, and you have to be. You have to manage your expectations. Is what it is, and I do that. I do that too. I manage my expectations.
I try to be a nut, but like intelligent about it. You know what I mean? Like, I push myself because I remember in the beginning, Exalted says, "You think you can do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have to. Like, I can't have any doubt in my mind at a certain point with the weight that you put up that I can't. Like, you, it's just like fighting. Like, you talk to a really good fighter at a top level, they think they can beat everybody. They might not be able to beat everybody, but you have to have that attitude in order to get in that ring and do scary shit."
This was the very best sport for me with ADHD, anxiety, and low self-esteem. This was the very best sport. This was the very best thing. Like Joe Carberry at Olympia Barbell, when he taught me about the sport, got me into the sport, saved my life in so many ways, and had no idea that he put me on that path.
I said that shit to you. You said stop being gay. I said you really changed my life. Exalted's like the team mom. He's like, oh, look at that coach. He changed his life. And you're like, you done being gay? Lay down and start benching. And we mean gay in the old school way. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but you're being stupid enough that you're acting gay. I don't know how to tell you how to do that, but yeah, it was. And then it came full circle that last meet when you're like, this is because of you, man. Dude, I was like, where the hell is this leave from?
Dude, it doesn't. That the 500 doesn't happen without your help. It doesn't happen. We're here to push each other forward. And that's for all of us. I mean, that's also part of Elite FTS. Live, learn, pass on. I'm here to help everybody else move forward and do better than I do. I hope. that 500 doesn't happen without your help.
It just, you help my cousin now, who's a cyclist. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Watching some of the other athletes that you help, watching people that have come from some pretty scary things like heart issues and all that,
Mhm.
and just feeling confident to doing that again. I mean, you do great work, and it's. I mean, there's a lot of people in the world like you that, but not a lot of people get a chance to meet.
Mhm.
You know, kind of happy that I did. Only on some occasions do you drive me up a wall, but that's what family
I
does.
got to knock you down every once in a while. House of Jews. I got to knock you down every once in a while.
Look, House of David was a phenomenal show.
Hey,
I mean,
Lee, you got to see the show. It's the House of Jews.
You act like you're not a super Jew, bro. It's the proudest, one of the proudest things in your life is being Jewish. And I was so excited to be like, this is a really good show. And then you just kind of killed it for me. I'm like, I got up to episode 3, and every time I put it on, I'm like, fucking Lee. Fucking Lee. Like, you know what I mean? I'm about to dye my hair green to go protest. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I love you and hate you at the same time. Like, my wife knows. She's like there's certain times I'm like, oh my God. You know, here we go with this shit.
Good times.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always fun. I hope I add at least a little levity, like down here.
100%. Wow, dude.
Dude,
when I look at videos of like you know, at ski biz or at even sometimes at Ralph's, those guys are like hardcore serious. Like, dude, we can be laughing our balls off and I can get under 500. Like, but you know when to let me focus. You know when to let me focus. You know when to knock off and let me focus. And that's usually like right after I hit the smelling salt and boom, it's on.
Yeah.
All right. And at in that moment, you guys are focused to let me make that lift. Those guys sometimes are just wound so tight.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't thrive in that environment with them wound that tight.
like you're comfortable with it, but a couple of the guys that we lift with, I know they're just getting into it. They're getting into heavier weights than they ever have been.
Yep.
And the two, Ken and Exalted, think too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they think, and they're 100 times stronger than they realize.
Yep.
And most of their lifts when they get frustrated is because they're thinking too much. So I figured if I act like a jackass, it takes their mind off the worry for a bit.
Well,
and then when they sit down, I know everybody's set up routine, how everybody looks.
That comes to being comfortable being uncomfortable. Not everybody can evolve enough to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I learned early on from reading Louis Simmons that to be successful in this sport, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
I think the first time I had 600 in my hands, it's like, he said, "You're not nervous?" I'm like, "Yeah. Yeah, but like, you just do it." Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like, I said, I've been nervous every football game. I've been nervous in every fight. You know what I mean? Like, until the first hit, until I get the weight in my hands, until the first rep. And then it's just like, it's business as usual. I'm like, you know what I mean? You just can't let the nerves control you. Because, like I said, both of those guys are so much stronger. They're just, I can see in their eyes, they're thinking a lot while they're
You
lifting.
control the weight, it does not control you.
Yeah.
You control the bar in your hands, it does not control you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's worked wonders again for my PTSD. You know what I mean? And then like to watch my kids' eyes go wide, like when I do something really cool, and then it's evolved past that to like, oh, that's just my dad. It's just what he does.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome feeling because when I helped coach the wrestling team in lifting, which it was a decent program at least for the lifting. She would, my dad has that. My dad, like my dad did this, and it was like the kids were like, really, and then like they would say, let me see the video, and I'd show them the video of us in the mock meet or whatever, and again, it evolved from amazement to what I can do to that. That's just what my dad does,
Dude. One of my favorite Sam moments. I was competing at, I think it may have been a world level meet in Atlantic City, and the WMPF, and Sam was still. He might have been in diapers still, but he was talking. I did a full meet, and I was coming up to squat a PR, and and like the whole room was wound tight. Like they announced my name, where I'm from, they announced the weight, what attempt it was, and the room was silent. And just as I was about to duck under the bar, he went, "Oh yeah, daddy!" Like that, and the whole room just cracked up. Like he had it in a Macho Man tone, and he was still in diapers. It was hilarious.
And that's the last time he said something supportive to you. He's the basement admiral.
Yeah, he's a basement admiral. He's in the business. He's in the business of telling me I suck.
All right, well, we're about in hour 10.
All right, I think that's enough.
Okay, you want to mention any of the companies that you appreciate? Like,
EliteFTS.com. Dave Tate, Matt Goodwin, Rhonda, Tracy Tate, the crew at Elite FTS, 100%. Death Wish Barbell, Ralph Talati, Andre Skiba's Barbell, Westside Barbell, all of that. Pharrell, yeah. How could I forget Pharrell? Yeah, Rob Pharrell, amazing gear, amazing product, and over-the-top customer service.
same thing with Spud. Spud's helped me out a lot. Well, especially when I'm looking for sleeves for my ham hocks. They seem to always find a size for me. Elite FTS was always nice to me. Always take their time with me. Made belts for me when I was super fat. Ralph, same thing. And Pharrell has always been very kind to me. Been able to make some good gear for me at a really reasonable price. So with that being said, thank you.
All right, thank you.